All right, everyone, welcome back. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch these videos. I am really hoping that some of the thoughts that I share on here will be helpful for my generation and the future generation. So please, if these thoughts resonate with you, please remember to subscribe and share them with your friends. I think that sometimes the work that we can do to change the world is by sharing things that we think can plant a seed in people's hearts and create the change that we want to see. So thank you for subscribing and thank you for sharing. All right, let's get to it. So before I talk about what I wanted to talk about today, I'm going to share a personal story. About 6-7 years ago, I remember I was on an Instagram live with a very popular pastor. And, he was just really saying to me that I am the leader in my marriage. And he was saying, if God comes today and he wants to hold somebody in your marriage accountable, who do you think he's going to call? And I said, he'll call me and he'll call my wife. And he was like, no, that's not what's going to happen. He's going to call you. He said, God will hold you responsible for everything that's happening in your relationship. And I was like, why me though? I was like, no, if he calls me, I will say, God, hold on, please. I'll be right back. I will go and I will call my wife. And I said, both of us will stand and we will give account, because I believe that the two people in the relationship are equally responsible for the health of the relationship. If you haven't guessed by now, he definitely did not agree with my position on this. But I think I'm sharing that because it's related to what I want to talk about today, because I think I lean more towards a relationship that has two leaders in it, because I think everybody, has their strengths, they have their weaknesses. And I think that I lean more to having two people who can consistently negotiate the path for their relationship moving forward. But today, I wanted to talk about the church's model, or the Christian model for marriage. And I just wanted to share my thoughts on it and some of the things that I think could be done to sort of maybe improve on it. So before I begin, I am not here to attack the faith. I'm not here to attack the church. I'm also not here to defend the patriarchy, because I think sometimes the Christian marriage model is a patriarchy, in the sense that it is a model that suggests, or it is a model that is based on the idea that the man is the head of the home. And I think that by definition, that makes it a patriarchy. But I'm not here to defend it. I am just here to share my thoughts on how I see it. So I think that in many churches, for many people who attend churches, they would agree with me when I say that the church preaches the idea that in a marriage, the man is supposed to lead and the woman is supposed to follow. And I think that when people talk about this model, it is often framed as God's design. It's framed as something sacred, that when you follow the design, it can create a lot of structure and a lot of order and harmony, right? Okay. So I want to say that I truly believe that this model can work, okay, under some very specific conditions that we don't talk about enough. So here's what I've noticed. When everyone in a marriage relationship truly understands their roles, genuinely accepts them, and feels safe inside of them, things can often feel calmer. Decisions can seem, clearer. There's less of that back and forth, less of that negotiation, less of that power struggle and conflict. And I think for some people in certain cultures, this can feel really grounding. Like there's less anxiety, there's less confusion. So I don't want to sit here and pretend that the model doesn't have any value, because I think that there's some people that just really still ascribe to it. So it does have value. And here's another thing that we don't say. For some people, and I want to say for some women, leadership in a man can look really attractive. I'm not talking about domination. I'm not talking about control. True leadership. When a man is steady, when he can make decisions, when he can stay calm under pressure, when he can take responsibility for actions, when he can take responsibility for his decisions, when he's accountable, when he owns the consequences of his choices, especially when they go wrong. I think that sometimes for some women, that kind of presence, it can create safety, it can create calm. And for those women, when they feel safe, they seem to just soften. Not in a childish kind of way, but just in a I trust you with my life kind of way. Their nervous system relaxes. They don't They don't feel like they have to stay on guard or worry about things that are external in the world. They don't feel like they have to manage everything. I think that kind of softness is not a weakness. It's trust. And I think for some people, that just seems to work. But I think that this is where we have to really take our time to talk about this, because leadership only feels calm and safe and true when it is real. And this is where I might get into a little bit of trouble. I think that the church has a little bit of a responsibility when it comes to this leadership. I think that the church sometimes can be great at teaching authority. You know, it's like it's a commandment from the Bible, right? The man should lead, the woman should submit. And I get that. But I wonder if the church has more of a responsibility to teach leadership capacity. Not just teach it, to teach, to test, to qualify the men that the mantle of leadership is being bestowed upon. I don't think the church asks enough. Can this man regulate his emotions? Can he tolerate disagreement without becoming defensive? Can he hear no and not punish? Can he repair when he causes harm? Can he admit when he's wrong and still stay grounded? Can he lead when he's not sure? Or can he only lead when he's confident? You know, I think that these are some leadership skills that don't come with the Y chromosome. I think that these are skills that don't come with a penis. Let's just call it what it is, right? Not calling out Bible verses or having titles. I mean leadership skills. These are things that need to be taught, because giving power to a human being without teaching these skills, I think it's dangerous. Here's the hard truth. When we assume that leadership comes with being a man instead of testing it, then I think that we're asking women to trust men without any evidence. And a trust like that, I don't know that it works. And look, I am speaking to my observations. Maybe someone was saying to me the other day that maybe because I'm a therapist, I see a lot of bad marriages. So maybe I'm not out there in the church, and maybe there's a lot of great marriages, and maybe people are feeling good about the leadership and the submission in their marriages. So then, just ignore the message. But I don't think that trust works like that. I think that for many women, trust grows when a man can be consistent, when he can be accountable, when he can handle the weight of responsibility in the relationship. And that's what I think I was trying to say to that pastor. I was like, no, I don't want the weight of that responsibility. It's hard enough to be responsible for myself and for my kids. I want my partner to be responsible for themselves. So again, this is for the people that it works for, right? Because without that responsibility, then I think sometimes submission becomes silence. And silence is not the same thing as peace, guys, right? Because from the outside, sometimes we can mistake silence for submission, because there's situations where a woman can submit and soften because she feels safe. And then there's the other one where she becomes silent because she feels like she has no power, right? And these two situations can look identical, but they feel completely different on the inside. And I think that if we act like we don't care about this difference, I think that it's going to create a lot of suffering. And maybe this is where, I think that the church has more of that responsibility, because I think if you're going to teach or preach a model where men lead by default, then maybe you also carry some of the responsibility to form and create men who can actually lead, not just spiritually, but emotionally, relationally, and psychologically. Leadership is not about having the final say. Leadership is about carrying the weight of impact. It's about carrying the responsibility of the decisions that you make and how they impact the people that you care about. If your decisions are going to shape someone's life, if your decisions are going to shape your wife's life, your children's life, you should be trained to handle that responsibility. I mean, what amount of training? Think about it. You have people running Fortune 500 companies, the amount of training that they have to take to lead those companies. You have people running big businesses and the amount of training that they have to take before they run those businesses. How much training are we giving to our men to say, you are going to lead a family? I mean, think about the idea that our families are sort of the smallest units of our communities. And what happens when we have families where we're raising some of the best children, where we're having some of the best human beings, then maybe that means that our societies are going to be amazing too. So our families are actually some really super crucial organizations. I don't think that it's a problem that the church values leadership. I think that the leadership is just declared. It's not developed, right? Men are told that they're leaders before they've learned to listen, before they've learned how to repair, before they've learned how to sit with discomfort and regulate themselves, right? And women are told that they're supposed to trust before they can even have the evidence that it's safe to trust. In my mind, that's kind of backwards. So here's what I think will be beautiful. And these are just suggestions. If the church was able to say, we believe in leadership, and because of that, we take leadership preparation very seriously. That would mean that they would have to get men to demonstrate emotional maturity, conflict skills, humility, accountability, and the capacity to grow before they even gave them the opportunity to lead their families. In my opinion, I don't think that this would weaken marriage. I think that it would strengthen it. I think that it would protect it. And again, I want to be clear, okay? I'm not practicing this model for the most part. And so I'm not saying that this model is for everyone. It's just that I find that the reality is that there are a lot of people that still gravitate to it, right? Some people are still going to thrive in the church's model. And for others, they want shared leadership. I think that's what I want. Some people are going to thrive in constant negotiation. I think that that's me. Some people just really want the other person in the relationship to be equally responsible for how the relationship goes. I think that that's also okay. I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think that there's a single best or right structure. I think that the only structure that works is the one that's chosen freely, that people enter into with open eyes, that's supported by real relationship skills and is also grounded in safety. So again, I'm not arguing for patriarchy. I'm arguing for responsibility. Responsibility that recognizes the amount of power that can come when we are asking men to be leaders in their homes. If someone is going to lead, then please let's make sure that they're capable. If someone is going to follow, let us just make sure that it is voluntary. And if someone is asked to trust, let us help them figure out ways to see the evidence of that trust. I also want to add that I think that when people critique the church's marriage model, they're often critiquing maybe not the right thing. I don't think the issue is leadership. I think the issue is untested, unproven, and untrained leadership. I don't think that the issue is submission. I think that the issue is submission where there's no safety. And I just wonder what would happen if the church was able to shift its focus a little bit to saying there'll be a lot more training. There'll be a lot more choice and less of sort of authoritatively enforcing these roles. So maybe what I'm saying is let's focus more on developing people than enforcing the roles. So less on authority, more on the capacity, less on control, more on care, more on focusing on the essence of the human beings who are experiencing that relationship and how they feel on the inside. Because I think that if the leadership is real and true, then trust doesn't have to be demanded. I think that for the people that that model of relationship appeals to, they would freely give their trust. And that's the conversation I think we need to be having. Now, one more piece I want to add before I end this video. I know that I'm talking about the idea that the church has this responsibility. I also want to acknowledge that the church is made up of people. So maybe at the end of the day, what we're really saying is that the men and the women who value this kind of relationship also have to take responsibility for the relationships that they get into. You can't choose a structure like this and then try to convince someone to get into it. If leadership and trust matters to you greatly, then please find someone who genuinely resonates with it. And not someone who tolerates it or someone that you hope they're going to change in 2 or 3 years from now, or someone who kind of feels pressured into it. And honestly, it goes the other way. If shared leadership and collaboration and equal decision making matters to you, then please choose someone who actually wants that too. No marriage model works when one person is trying to convince or convert the other person to join them in it. And yeah, those are my thoughts. I wonder what you guys think. Let me know in the comments as usual, and I hope that I don't get into trouble for this. All right, talk soon. Bye.